Hello, and welcome to Archipelago 2v2 with Matkap and Eolina versus Megakidicarus and eudaimonistic. My name is Bad Moons, and I am joined here with Eumenin.
Glad to be here. Excited to be a part of this kind of inaugural tournament for this pretty novel multi-world setup here.
And I believe we are ready to start. So there's a couple things that are going to be going on here. Namely, we have two different games. One of them is Link to the Past, a common occurrence on the SpeedGaming network, but we also have a Factorio randomizer. Eumenin, do you want to talk about that a little bit? What's going on there? What are they going to be doing in the early game?
Yeah, so for any of you who have not seen this before, this is the 2v2 matchup where we have one Zelda player and one Factorio player on each side, both playing the same seeds, such that the two Factorio players will be building in the same world, producing the same things, with the same goal of launching a rocket, while the Zelda players will be finding the same items in the same chests, as you would expect in a race format. So with the Factorio Archipelago randomizer, and particularly this race format, what we're looking to accomplish here on the Factorio side is to launch a rocket, which in a normal vanilla game can take several hours to days, depending on your familiarity with the game. In this mode, it's simplified down such that all technologies that you need to research, including that for the rocket silo, will only require red and green science, drastically reducing the amount of time it takes to launch the rocket and win the game. But what the runners don't know on the Factorio side is what the ingredients for each of their science packs are going to be, as well as what's going to be a part of the rocket ingredients that are required to build to win the game. So instead of the standard iron gear copper plate that you would need to build for red science, you will be any number of things that are considered cheap enough to be realistic to be a part of red science. But they might not be the same thing they're used to seeing. So you'll see some unique initial base setups that you wouldn't see in a standard Factorio speedrun.
So to jump in here, from Link to the Past side, we have an inverted seed. There's a 1 in 4 chance that can roll. And Matkap is, you might wonder what's going on. Why is he just dying over and over again? And what's going on is he's farming bombs. It's one of the most consistent ways to get bombs early in inverted. You just drop in that hole. There are 2 in that pile of skulls, and if you die, you reappear right there and can get those 2 skulls. Meanwhile, Mega, he's done 2 map checks already, and I've missed where the crystals are on that map both times. But he did find a flute in the C-shape house and immediately activated it. In inverted, you can activate the flute at effectively the Thieves' Town entrance. So Matt looks like he's going to kind of clean up what he can with Skullwoods right here, and Mega is going to continue checking around the world, pressing this early flute he found. What's going on with Factorio here? We've got 2 different things here.
Yeah, so on the Factorio side, both players have a pretty similar setup. Looks like I'm seeing a miner on iron ore, so it looks like that's probably going to be one of our ingredients just for the base red science. Instead of iron plates, it's literally just the iron ore itself. So we'll keep an eye out on that to see if we can catch exactly what the ingredients are for their randomized red science to get them started. So as part of this format, particularly when we get an inverted seed on the Zelda side. It's really important for the Factorio players to get up and running as quickly as they can, as these Zelda players will run out of checks to do fairly rapidly, and quite often progression items will be locked in the early areas of the Factorio tech tree. So again, items are mixed up between the games, so a Zelda player might end up finding a new set of factories, faster factories for the Factorio partner, while the Factorio player can complete a research and maybe find a Moon Pearl or a progressive glove for the Zelda player. So they're both working together, trying to make decisions as a team to determine how best to keep both players moving through their respective games, trying to be the first team to get Ganon killed in their Zelda seed and the rocket launched on their Factorio side.
Yeah, you make a good point about inverted changing the strategy here a little bit. The general way that these games tend to play out is the Zelda player will do all of their checks available, and then they'll have to use a hint to find a way to get into the Dark World. In this case, it'll be the Light World. And then after that, usually you only get one more hint before you're out of hint points in a typical seed. That said, inverted kind of reduces the number of checks you get, with one hint point being from each check. We've got Mega checking the hype cave here. He did find a hammer and a sword. And I see Matt has a sword also, so I probably missed his hype cave. Hype cave is certainly a premium location, especially in inverted when you have fewer relative checks. One question which was answered in chat, but just to reiterate it, you will see these Link to the Past players picking up stars, and that is just to signify a technology for their Factorio partner.
Yep, so another aspect of the Factorio side is whenever a technology is received, whether they research it themselves or they receive it from the Zelda player, they get an entire full stack of any items that that technology would give them. For example, if they get Automation 1, they'll get a full stack of 50 level 1 factories and 50 long-handed inserters. So we'll see certain builds in some games that might not show up in others based off of technologies that the players get and how they decide to use those free materials to try to shortcut and take advantage of all those free things, so that they might not have to build quite so many basic inserters when they take advantage of the 50 free long inserters. So we see the beginnings of iron smelting there on Eolina's side. Possibly either going to be turned into iron plates, or it'll just be part of the actual red science production. I still haven't quite caught what the both ingredients of the red science are. Sometimes they'll be as simple as just iron ore and coal, just things you mine directly out of the ground and can feed into some factories. Sometimes you'll have to go so far as to produce green circuits and maybe iron gears, some more expensive things. It's random what those ingredients will be up to a certain difficulty, just so that you don't end up having to produce entire, let's say, like labs as part of red science, which would just be kind of unreasonable and not very fun to play.
Madcap finding the lamp. Sometimes I feel an underappreciated item, but I am always glad to find it. Sometimes you just need a fire source, and I think everyone will agree doing a dark room with a lamp is preferable to not having a lamp. Mega is pushing on into Thieves Town here. And I guess to note also, Matt had to do the arrow game just to get enough rupees. It's a good way to make some rupees here in the inverted mode. Yes, this is Factorio and A Link to the Past Archipelago. we have a 2v2 where one player is on the factory and one player is linked to the past, and they are working together to both launch a rocket and slay Ganon.
On the Factorio side, it's still a little slow going, as is expected. Normally, there'll be a pretty long ramp-up time where the Factorio player receives quite a few items from their Zelda partner as the initial checks get done. It's a little less here on this inverted seed, but it takes a little while to get the initial setup of the factory, get your power generation going with those steam engines. Looks like we have eudaimonistic going ahead and just getting that coal worked out to his power just so he doesn't have to deal with that in the future. It's always the goal in Factorio is to automate as much as he can. And so he's spending the time early just to get this set up, not have to deal with it later on.
And can you speak to also the differences in power generation in one of these seeds versus a more typical Factorio?
So some things come up in this particular format. The typical time that this rule set is set up for is somewhere between 1 to 2 hours to launch your rocket. So there are several different types of power you can normally utilize in Factorio. The normal progression would be steam power using coal up to solar panels with batteries to buffer during nighttime. And then eventually you can get giant, complicated nuclear factories with huge steam turbines. In these games, most of the time, you'll be stuck with coal-powered steam engines just to keep your base running enough to get you to the finish line. There isn't too much thought that's expended on longevity of these factories. Luckily, the settings can be configured for the world gen as well as all the other randomizations, so our world is very generous here in terms of the size and richness of all of our mineral patches, so the players are never going to be at risk of running out of coal or not having enough surface area to mine coal to feed both their furnaces and their power plants.
All right, we do see both of our runners in one in Skullwoods, one in Thieves Town. Looks like Mega is done with Thieves Town, kind of trading places. In Inverted, you kind of do what you can. There are only so many checks. And then kind of there's a few ways. So both of them having the flute, they can go to the mountain. And as I have learned, there are extra checks on the mountain in Inverted as the path to Ganon's Tower, in this case it will be Agna's Tower, is open. So we'll see when they make the play to go up the mountain. I think first they'll kind of clean up these easy checks. Matt may make an attempt on Thieves Town, see if he can clean it proper. Having the fighter sword, I guess he's going to check here real quick if it's an enemizer. A boss shuffle, I should say, rather. But fighting blind with the fighter sword, there's a script you can follow, and it'll be the same every single time. So he may make an attempt to go clean this dungeon while he can. We do see Eolina starting with a few labs going here, too.
Got an early lab setup, just a single factory feeding into several labs there. Yet another thing that gets randomized in this is the actual crafting time of pretty much every item in the game, which can include the smelting of steel plates, copper plates, steel plates. All that can be anywhere from 50% faster to 200% slower. So we see kind of the outline of a pretty expansive iron smelting area there on eudaimonistic side, which leads me to believe we might have a slower time on our iron smelting. So you just have to produce that many more stone furnaces to try to keep up with your factory's demand. We also see a lab, or a mall set up on Eolina's side, just producing some of the essentials that you're going to be chewing through as you build your base. Those iron gears that are a part of just about everything you make: factories, miners, labs, inserter arms. They're pretty ubiquitous. We also saw a small green circuit setup, which is also a very common item used, and can take quite a bit of your handcrafting time to make by hand. So having a little setup there will definitely help speed them along as they build up their factory and start ramping up their science. And I might be seeing that wrong, but it looks like we might already have blue belts available on Udai's side. Having the faster belts allows for a higher throughput when you're in particular need of a whole lot of something really fast. We do get the free stacks as mentioned earlier, so it looks like he's just using them as, hey, I just got 100 free belts. That saves me having to craft some yellow ones, so I'm just going to throw them down here. Probably not too concerned about how quick his coal gets to his smelters at this point. But a good use of what's given to you, and part of kind of the fun of this game mode is that you really get to think on your toes, which you might not do as much in a standard Factorio speedrun, where things are pretty scripted. You always know what you need to build next, how much of it you need to build, and it's just a matter of how fast you can do it. In this, you don't necessarily know what's going to be required for your green science. And you can look ahead and see what's going to be part of your rocket, but you have to actively do that, so you don't necessarily know right off the bat exactly what you're going to need to produce.
We got Matkap here with the blind fight. This will be the first boss kill of the game. Got the first head down. It's generally the easy part.
So still trying to catch exactly what's required for the red science here.
Oh, and he's got it.
Looks
Good
like
job.
Yep, very clean kill there.
And then on the other side, Megakidicarus has found the Lionels that plague the bridge up there. Let's see if he gives it another try. He may. His mirror is blocking him. He's gonna go back to the Dark World to avoid the cabbages on his climb up here. So, eudaimonistic's got, I hesitate to say a complicated factory going here, but what's going on? What is he doing?
So he's got a automated setup there, feeding both coal and iron ore to his smelters. I noticed this particular build when we played against them earlier this week, and it's definitely a model I'm going to egregiously steal in the future when I start playing Seeds again, where I want to automate the coal going to my smelters. Basically, two splitters that kind of face each other so that you end up with one half of the belt with iron ore and the other half with coal. Feeding an even amount to all the stone smelters along that line. So it works out quite well. So luckily here, it looks like our Zelda players still have some work to do and they're not stuck yet. We should be seeing, hopefully soon, the Factorio players getting their initial science arrays up and running. We have quite a bit of smelting, both copper and iron, quite early here. Whether they're required for the red science or not, just getting that set up gets that work out of the way. You don't have to think about it anymore, and you'll just be producing all those materials that you'll use at some point. Green circuits, which require both copper and iron, are ubiquitous in everything you make, so you can never have too many of them.
Yeah, I think Matkap's going to be in good position to make a wish here soon. I use the term wish. It's essentially a hint, but from my perspective, whenever I play, I once I get a hint, my factory player is always nice to me and seems to get it to me immediately. But going into Palace of Darkness here with the hammer and with a bottle, which I believe has a green potion in it, he's going to be able to clear just about everything, even with the lamp, up except for Helmasaur King, unless there is a bow here. Between that and having the Moon Pearl, I think Team Bolas Azules is in pretty good shape here.
So I managed to catch it there. It looks like our red science here is going to be copper plates and iron ore. So a little bit simpler than what we would see in vanilla, which would be copper plates and iron gears. Saves you some smelting and just some iron in general, with iron gears costing 2 ore per instead of just the one here. So we have our first automated red production coming here on the belts. We should be seeing it here momentarily. We also see a similar mall setup that Eolina set up earlier. Coming in on eudaimonistic side, we see green circuits, some inserter arms, all good stuff that you're always going to need more and more of. Good to just get that set up so you have it available to you for the whole rest of the time you're playing here. We also see him using some of those long-handed inserters that he got for free. Save some of his short-handed inserters that might be more useful in other parts of his factory. Yep, and there we see Eolina's red science starting to produce. He's building out that line. Presumably that's where his labs will be going, and thinking about which side to put them on. There he goes, first 2 down. So we should start seeing some technology coming out here from the Factorio side. So in terms of what they want to research, the research in Factorio is hidden such that there's 2 different icons that they can see. One will signify kind of trash items, things like 10 rupees, single arrow,
heart containers.
Yeah, pieces of heart, which could be nice to have, but won't necessarily win you the game on their own. And the other type of technology are things that are specifically marked as advancement technologies, which would be things like your moon pearls, your progressive gloves, and potentially certain technologies that are required for the Factorio player to either research their technologies, the red and green technologies, or to launch their rocket, and sometimes what's required to build their rocket silo itself. In this game mode with the free samples, when the Factorio player researches their rocket silo technology, they will receive an entire rocket silo for free, saving them the trouble of having to build that from all the individual parts.
Also, speaking of receiving items for free, of note, there is some strategy at the late game on when you want to launch the rocket versus when you want to do research. Notably, when a player finishes the game in this mode, they will forfeit. Oh, and we've got a glove there from Matt to interject in the Dark Maze, but forfeit's kind of a misnomer term here. You complete your goal, and what will happen is all of the items that you had not researched or checked will then be delivered to your partner. So the decision point comes: when do you stop research because your rocket launch is quicker?
On eudaimonistic side, we see the factories going down. He's getting ready to pump out quite a bit of red science there. It's a good big setup. Shouldn't need to expand that too much more in the future, hopefully. Sometimes you will run into technologies that can cost anywhere up to 2,500 science packs. We don't like to see that. It's always a hassle when you have to do that kind of research. But it's also always part of a randomizer, and sometimes you'll hit that and one team will realize they need to research it before the other, and you can have some interesting outcomes from little randomization quirks like that. On Eolina's side, we see quite a good science setup there. Looks like he's already at about 16 labs here at a pretty good time. So we should be seeing quite a few technologies coming out, and you can see him looking through the tech tree there a little bit. When you see that pop up, the shape of the technology tree is also randomized, just like most everything in this, where instead of the original tech tree, which has all sorts of prerequisites that snake down a long way, all the way from Automation 1 down to your rocket silo. In this, it kind of turns into different shapes where you can have a pyramid shape or a funnel shape where a couple random technologies of varying lengths may be required to research
a
another
power
one.
problem.
And yeah, we have a major power outage here on Eolina's side. So this is the advantage that Udai gained by taking the time early on to set up that huge coal line that you can see there a moment ago along the top of his screen, where the coal automatically heads over to his steam engines. Eolina hadn't quite yet done that, so ran out of coal, ran out of power, and everything shut down. So you see him paying that back now, establishing this real long coal line just to get that taken care of and not have to worry about that going forward. So there's the first 4 labs of Udai's science array set up there. You also saw him throw in a couple what are called modules. Most factories and buildings in Factorio have some slots for these modules, which can have different effects, such as reducing the power consumption or increasing the working speed, or increasing the efficiency of the inputs versus the outputs going into any factory, occasionally producing the extra output for free. So it looks like he has access to quite a few speed modules, which will increase the working speed of his labs at the cost of a bit higher energy outputs. We may see him expand his steam power generation somewhere in the near future as he utilizes those more and more.
All right, we see a check from Matt. The goal for this game is 7 crystals, open Ganon. So we're going to be in here. We're going to have to get through all of these crystal dungeons. Matt does have 2 already. No, I am mistaken. He does have a pendant. I believe Cows in Darkness is a pendant. But we've got our work cut out for our runners here. Megakidicarus, if he can continue on through Palace of Darkness here, will get his glove. He's going to check this hint first. Oh, and he got a relatively useful hint of where his book is on a Factorio research. But then he'll get his glove. He'll follow suit and make his way into the light world. Of note, I guess because Matt is here at the time, he's going to finish up Escape, but there is the treasure trove of Kakariko still waiting for him.
So we've seen some power generation problems here on both sides. It looks like Udai is running a little low on power, which will slow down your factory, slow down your research, slow down your inserter arms just a little bit, but he's powering through it at the moment. Looks like he's building some more steam engines, so he'll get to that here shortly. Otherwise, still a pretty expansive iron smelting array here early. Feeding so far just his maul. We haven't seen any requirement in terms of science yet or for rocket inputs. It's pretty common to have some sort of iron input for your rocket silo. So the randomization for the rocket silo, in this case, since we are doing a green science maximum setup, it'll be relatively cheap items. So for people familiar with Factorio, you're used to seeing rocket control units and low density structures, some of these endgame really expensive items. What we're going to be seeing here instead are going to be some much simpler things, like maybe inserter arms or something from circuit networks like red wires or green wires. Sometimes we'll need to set up steel for empty barrels or for steel plates themselves. So on the rocket silo technology itself, there's a bit of a spoiler that's available to the Factorio players themselves, where it will tell them exactly what's going to be required for their rocket silos so that they can begin to prepare those materials ahead of time prior to actually doing the research and then being surprised with what's required after it's already in your inventory. One thing we haven't seen yet is any bug action in either of the Factorio games. A normal factory is going to produce some pollution, and we saw it there for a moment on Udai's screen, which is this big red cloud that's visible on your map that will kind of show how far your pollution has spread. And when it reaches one of the native bug bases that are populated when the world is first created, those bugs will start to reproduce very quickly, and at some point they will actively charge at your base. So we see Udai out here now, quite conveniently showing off a bit of combat here. So on his way over here, we saw him stop at the lake and do a little bit of fishing, which for us in the Factorio world is basically little health potions that you can eat pretty much one a second to refill about 1/3 of your health. We also see a rocket launcher coming out from him. Quite conveniently, with the free stack option here in the Factorio side, actually seeing, I think, some explosive rockets here. So he's gotten 2 different progressive rocketries. Makes it a lot easier to deal with bugs when you have a rocket launcher versus a pistol. So he makes very quick work of that base. We'll see whether that comes back to bite Eolina later. If he continues to ignore that bug base, we might see an active attack come in and do some damage on his side. So we'll see how that plays out here in the near future.
So I'm not sure when it happened, but about a few minutes ago, Matkap did hint for his Pegasus boots, and it is at uranium processing. But due to the nature of the randomizer, and it looks like... So there are a couple different ways that the tech tree can get laid out here in Factorio versus pyramids and funnels, and where any one tech might be. Do you want to speak to that real quick?
Yeah, so I touched on it earlier, where you have maybe a pyramid shape or a funnel shape or a diamond shape, which will lay out the technologies. Say in a pyramid shape, you'll have one at the top that's required for everything beneath it. And then the next row would have 2, and then the row below that would have 3. So sometimes you get into a case where you'll see one of those technologies that's marked as an important advancement item at the bottom of one of these pyramids, and you have to end up researching 3 or 4 or sometimes even 5 different unimportant technologies ahead of it before it's even unlocked for you to research it. So when the Zelda player or Factorio player uses their hint points to try to find an item, the game will tell them that that particular item is on, I think we said nuclear fuel or nuclear processing.
Uranium processing.
Uranium processing. That technology could be immediately available to them, or it could be buried somewhere deep in one of the tech pyramids or tech diamonds, and it'll take quite a while to get to it.
In this case, he has just received his boots, so he got his wish here.
It looks like it was something available right away. The technologies still have a reference to their original name when they're randomized here in Factorio, which will retain their original cost. So something like Automation 1 will always be a fast research, but Space Science Pack or Nuclear Rocketry are those types of techs that'll take 1,000 or 2,000 or 2,500 science packs to research. And those can show up anywhere in your tech tree. So you really hate to see one of those huge techs kind of at the top of a diamond blocking everything that's after it.
And we have nearly probably the longest distance high five by both of our Zelda runners is one leaves Kakariko as the other enters. Matkap's going to push this advantage on the boots he's got in check. They bonk rocks immediately. And Megakidicarus is going to sweep through and clean up Kakariko here. I didn't see anything of note come out of the Kakariko chest, but of course I could have missed that.
I also
go
have
ahead.
not seen too much pop up on the Factorio side. It looks like we're still looking for our first green science. So some technologies in the Factorio side are translated into progressive technologies, very similar to what you see on the Zelda side with things like the progressive glove and progressive sword, where instead of finding something explicit like the butter sword directly, you'll find a progressive sword. So that translates on the Factorio side, where instead of finding a specific color pack of science like your blue science or your purple science, you'll find a progressive science which will automatically award you. And it looks like as we're talking about it, we see green science over on Udai side. I once again didn't quite catch what the inputs to it were, but at least it's available, and now that opens up, if they have the ingredients for it, the opportunity to start producing green science and a whole lot more technology to research, including the rocket silo for our Factorio players.
All right, quick check here into the graveyard ledge. In inverted, once you get to the light world, some of these checks become a little bit more free because you had to suffer previously. And we do have the bow there. So I had misspoken earlier when I said that Matt had completed Palace of Darkness, but should he want to go collect that pendant, now he can. He may make a play over to Eastern now. I did not get a look at a map, so I don't know where the other pendant is located.
On Udai's side, we see him already with electric furnaces. That's another one of our progressive technologies where the Factorio player will first receive steel furnaces, which are twice as fast as our standard stone furnaces. And then after that, you'll receive the electric furnaces, completely eliminating the need to deal with any sort of coal input at the expense of a higher power requirement. So again, between those speed modules and now this looks like pretty huge steel smelting array here, indicating that we're going to need steel for something here. With how soon ago he got the green science, I'm kind of thinking he's either having to make steel plates for it or perhaps is going to need fluid handling to make some steel barrels to produce his logistic science packs here. We also see him laying down some extra labs to speed things up a bit. So far, Eolina's had a bit of an advantage there on his red science research. And as I talk about this, both of them are expanding their labs. So it looks like Eolina will continue with a slight advantage in that category, but that can always be blown away by just picking the right research to go for next. Sometimes you'll find exactly what you're looking for. Sometimes you'll pick a long one and strike out and get something you just didn't need.
So you mentioned steel. What's the relevance of that in terms of what they're doing with their factories here?
So steel will be required. Oh, just to interrupt myself here, we see that bug attack going on there over on Eolina's side. Again, the foreshadowing earlier when Udai went out and just took care of that well ahead of time before it ever became a risk. Now we see Eolina paying the price here, losing every single one of his steam engines there and his burners. So he's just all the way at 0 power generation here. Has to take the time to rebuild all that. That will definitely slow him down. And we might have also just seen a attack on Udai's side. I see some red X's there. So something happened, whether it was a bug attack or perhaps a stray explosive rocket to deal with those bugs. So he's on a mission out there to deal with those while Eolina's still here picking up the pieces after his bug attack.
So Megakidicarus going into the graveyard ledge here is going to be rewarded with a bow. And Matt, moving on to Eastern Palace. I still can't tell if it's a pendant or a crystal, but at this point it may not matter. You may want to do what you can. Both runners kind of in this state now where they're looking for mitts or fire rod, because between those two items it's going to block just about all the rest of the remaining dungeons here.
So our base setup here for this particular tournament is that every 20% of the checks in your game awards you an opportunity to do one single hint for an item for the Zelda player or a specific technology for the Factorio player. And it looks like Udai now is getting attacked from a different angle while he was far away dealing with a different bug base. So we'll see what kind of wreckage is here once he gets up here to his power generation. The bugs not being nice to our players here, here in this desert world. It's always nice when you get a new world to see yourself in a nice lush forest, because those trees suck up quite a bit of pollution, and in a game that only lasts 1 or 2 hours, it'll normally keep you pretty safe. But this is a pretty dry world here, so we're going to be dealing with quite a bit of pollution spread. As you can see on Udai's map there, we have a bit of red going off the edges of his vision, so who knows what lurks out there in the dark reaches of your map. Could be any number of bug bases that you're dealing with here, so we'll see how these players manage this going forward.
So I think maybe, I guess I didn't notice Mega had skipped some of Kakariko here. He's going to go back and clean it up. Nothing to note, unless of course I've missed it so far in Eastern here.
It looks like both of our Factorio players still dealing with power issues, mostly bug related, but looks like on Eolina's side might be around time to start ramping up a bit and throwing down a few more steam engines. A player can always get a pretty quick glance. You saw it there on Eolina's side for a moment, a kind of power overview for their factory, where the bar in the top left shows what their factory requires, and the bar in the top middle shows what's available. So we've seen just a little bit short on Eolina's side, so a few more steam engines here should put him in a good place for the short term. We'll see how far he expands this right now. Udai still taking out his frustrations on those bugs that took out his power a moment ago. Hopefully taking care of this will calm them down for a bit and give them some time to get back to that big steel array and potential green science, which may be in the near future for our Factorio players.
All right, and Matt making short work of the Armos Knight. Not a particularly difficult boss when you have a bow. He picked up a upgrade for Factorio. I'm not sure what it was, but did get a crystal. So I can say with confidence now that he has 2. There's the map check that I had been missing. Tower of Hera is the 3rd pendant. It's generally one that I want to do when I have to do all the dungeons. Just in terms of it being quick.
On Eolina's side, it looks like we have small lamps being produced here, which is not a great thing you want to see on your green science. Pretty complicated build, requires both copper wire and green circuits, as well as just some basic iron plates. So looks like we have the first component there ready to go for our green science. Still thinking the other one is somehow steel related, unless Udai has looked ahead at his rocket requirements and knows that there's going to be some steel production required in his future, and he's just getting that started early, ready to go for when he gets his rocket silo researched. Mentioned earlier, for this game mode with Archipelago, when one player finishes, it will automatically complete all of their checks that are remaining. So for the Zelda player, any chest or check that they haven't done will automatically get sent out to both players. Similarly, on the Factorio side, any technology that hasn't been researched yet will be sent out to both players. So a strategy that a team can utilize is when one player or the other player is very close to winning the game, or they see that they're in go mode, they can stop doing checks at the expense of their teammate just to get to that item forfeit sooner, and allow them to just get all those checks out and end up saving a lot of time instead of traveling the world looking for whatever particular technology or item you're missing. Just go ahead and send it all out at once and get one of your 2 team timers stopped. So we'll see how these teams approach that as we get closer to our victory condition here. What's going on our Zelda side here?
Well, we got some overworld cleanup here. Mega is gonna take his newfound bow and go into Eastern, clean that up, and get a crystal on the board. Always be clearing dungeons, as they say. The strategy for success. Yeah, we're essentially in a hunt here for the book, or the fire rod, or mitts. I guess hookshot. You know, there's a world where hookshot is in Swamp Palace itself, and generally the worst place to find a vanilla item, or find an item in Zelda, is its vanilla location. I believe Matt got his Master Sword in Mini Moldorm Cave. So that should be an area that Megakidicarus goes to eventually, as it does have a plethora of items in it. Quick check on Lumberjack there. I missed it, but I think out of the corner of my eye I saw it was just a Factorio upgrade. Could be anything. It's kind of like seeing a shovel there. You don't know if you will need it or not. It is usually one that, unless you get a hint for it, you're not going to go back and get it.
So we saw a moment ago another bug attack on Eolina's base. Not too much damage done there, just some munching away at some conveyor belts there up by his green science production. So hasn't been threatening enough to send him on a mission across the world to go deal with those. Playing with fire there, but once you get particularly the flamethrower, which we've seen Eolina use to clean up those bugs, makes the bug attacks a little less threatening, but it is definitely an annoyance when you have to stop whatever you're building to go address that attack on you. Sometimes it's nice to get some gun turrets or some laser turrets in your base, just to throw them down where you think the bugs are coming from and just not have to worry about them anymore and focus on getting your rocket launched.
I do have to point something out right now. Matkap just did a tricky little thing with the mirror to grab the breadsmith here, and it seems he is rewarded with the mitts immediately from his partner, so that he wouldn't have had to do this trick. But all the same, it was impressive. He saved the breadsmith without the need of the mitts through a clever mirror bonk. The reward is some heart. That said, with the mitts, that is going to open up a lot more locations here for Matkap. We'll see where he goes with this. He'll probably clean up what he's doing right now. Maybe head in... Well, I was going to say Ice Palace, but he's sorely missing an important fire source.
So on Eolina's factory, we see the first bits of green science getting produced. So it looks like we have small lamps and coal. So one nice ingredient, one hassle of an ingredient, but it's got it going. So depending on what's required for the rocket, Any moment now, we can see him switch over to the rocket silo research, which in our game mode only requires red and green science to research. And we'll see we could have a victory on the Factorio side anywhere in the near future. All depends on what random ingredients are required and whether we're still looking for some additional technologies there.
So we got the Purple Chest World tour here. Usually it's a frog following you, but I guess this is inverted, so I gotta switch some things up. Matt, taking the fairies in the pot there to health up before he heads into Armos, and he has just received the Cane of Samaria from his Factorio player. Surely it's going to be needed for both Turtle Rock and Misery Mire required dungeons.
Yeah, so it's always interesting to see a bit of divergence in the technology research. When you get into these large pyramids that it looks like they have here, they're either medium or large pyramids, I think I've seen. Sometimes you make a decision to do a longer research because there might be 2 or 3 important advancement technologies that you can see behind it. So you try to get that done sooner, where another person might decide to go through a couple kind of medium duration researches that are known all potential advancement items. So that's where you can sometimes get divergence here in the factory research. So we'll see how that Cane of Samaria plays out for Megakidicarus here.
And we do have a... looks like Megakidicarus ran out of arrows here. He's gonna try his best to clean up the fight with the sword. Maybe employ some cane tactics here. Seems to actually be doing a pretty good job with it.
I'm not super familiar with the Link to the Past, but that's a pretty clever use of it that I haven't personally seen before.
The Armos Knights are very easy to defeat with the bow, and then without the bow, anything else, the amount of hits they take is a lot. I personally find the sword to be the next best way to do it, but he did quite well with the cane there. And I think I just saw Tempered Sword. Yeah, there's Tempered Sword for Matkap. Nice quality of life improvement. Everyone always wants swords. Probably the least useful sword is Butter Sword, and that's still a prize to be had here.
So back in our factories, we have Udai ramping up the power generation quite a bit here. This probably should be enough to pretty much get him through the whole rest of the game. This is quite an expansive steam engine build-up here. We'll see how crazy he goes with the speed modules that we know he has. Probably may end up needing to power up a little more if he continues utilizing those as much as he can.
It looks like Eolina might have some logistic robots, or he's got some sort of automation going, which to me I think is a rare experience in these Archipelago 2v2s.
Yep. So the construction robots and logistic robots both are considered non-advancement items, so they very often get lost in the shuffle here of the junk items you're trying to avoid to research at all costs. But it looks like he lucked into them this time, and trying to see, I think those are construction robots, so he may have it set up to let them build up his science array while he focuses on other tasks. Just requires your drone bays to kind of be spread out in a certain range. You can see when he hovers over them, you have that orange and green area that kind of lays out what their effective range is. And then some logistics chests full of the items the robots want, and they will just go ahead, fly around, and build it for you from those ghosts that you can see on the east end of Eolina's science array. So cool to see those in one of these seeds. You don't get an opportunity to use them all that often.
Yeah, so one thing that I did miss, I made it a point I was going to keep track of these hints, and I kind of lost track, but the progressive glove to get the mitts for Matkap, that was a hint that has been found, as he does have the mitts. On the other side, Megakidicarus has hinted for Bombos, and that location is Ganon's Tower, Compass Room, top right in his own game. So maybe I'll see right here. I don't know what the medallion requirements are, but yep, sure enough, Bombos is needed to enter Turtle Rock through the vanilla path. One thing of interest here with the mirror in Inverted, there are multiple ways to get into Turtle Rock, so unless Meyer also needs that Bombos, it may not be necessary. Matt's going in. Oh, go ahead.
We had a pretty big steel array built up on Eudai's side, and it's not actually required for our red or green science, so it's likely that's going to be needed for one or more of our rocket components. And I don't think I've seen steel started on Eolina's side, so that might be a nice advantage for the actual construction of the rocket here for eudaimonistic. Otherwise, expanding the science, he's got quite a good setup there. Every single one of those labs either has speed modules or productivity modules in it. That'll help both increase the speed of his research and improve the efficiency of the red science that he produces, getting just a little extra credit out of each of those science packs that gets consumed by those labs with the productivity modules. We see him looking at the ingredients to his rocket silo that he hasn't started research on yet. Fortunately didn't catch, but saw him hovering over shotgun shells there, which is a pretty common requirement for a rocket silo, needing 2 copper plates, 2 iron plates per, being relatively cheap, but has typically a pretty long build time. So the sooner you can get those set up with as many factories as you can, the sooner you can get the required number of them. A rocket requires 100 rocket parts to be launched, and each one of those rocket parts will require 10 pieces of 3 different items. So far, we're looking at shotgun shells and then potentially something requiring steel, which if it's either engines or steel plates or some form of barrels, requires exactly 1,000 steel plates per, unless he utilizes some productivity modules in the actual rocket silo itself. So, yep, there we see the shotgun shells getting set up on Eudai, so he's getting those buffered. With a setup like this, and with the amount of iron and copper there filling up his conveyor belts, should have that buffered up to 1,000 here in short order.
Megakidicarus made his way into Mini Moldorm Cave, maybe just trying to be creative or enjoying the King of Samaria, did what he could to kill the Mini Moldorms that way. Did end up getting his Master Sword. Meanwhile, Matkap on Death Mountain, kind of cleaning both sides up, both Light World and Dark World at the same time. Picked up a heart container, a blue mail, and his cape, of which he's using right now in Turtle Rock. As mentioned previously, you can get into Turtle Rock in Inverted with the mirror by using it at the Spiral Cave entrance. Or at the Laser Bridge entrance. Looks like he's just going to dip in and dip out. Probably just collect the chest real quick. Of note, he still does not have the Cane of Samaria, so he can't really go much further into Turtle Rock. And ultimately will need the Fire Rod to defeat Trinex. Both runners also in need of a hook shot. Well, maybe not. I believe Swamp Palace is the other pendant, so if hookshot is there, you got to believe that our runners are going to put that off until hinted or a last resort. Yeah, the Cane of Samaria was a research from Factorio.
So I saw briefly on Eolina's stream that he has the rocket silo research queued up at the end of a couple other advancement technologies. So we may have everything that's required for our Factorio rocket. It seems, based off of what I've been watching, that so far eudaimonistic has an advantage on preparation for the rocket, but that side might be missing a technology that we missed that Eolina may have access to, letting him know that he's ready to get that rocket launched and get all of his items sent out to his Link to the Past partner.
All right, so we do see a little bit more cleanup of Turtle Rock here through the various entrances you can get to in Inverted.
Some sort of power accident going on over here. Some more the old bug attack on the power plants. Classic bug tactic, incredibly obnoxious. Some players prefer to go with an ounce of prevention and hunt down those bug bases. Others just deal with it as it comes up so they can leave their focus on getting their factory built.
How about that timing? Matt does receive his Cane of Samaria while in Turtle Rock. Just needs a little bit of a Fire Rod help here, and he could clean it up right now. We'll see Megakidicarus also on the Dark Death Mountain, making his way over to the east side. We'll see if he makes an attempt to get into Turtle Rock with the mirror, or is just going to check and see what he gets. We do have the information of what we know is over there, but he doesn't know. He might think that he's going to end up with Hookshot or another glove or something on East Death Mountain. Actually, to note, I see that he has the Hookshot. I don't know if that was found and I missed it, or if it was a research. According to the race rules for this tournament, hovering is not allowed.
And with this being a pretty novel setup and very new, the organizers of it wanted to make sure it was pretty accessible to a range of skill sets, not to give too experienced of Zelda players, where there's a much larger community of players, too much of an advantage over the Factorio players, where this is a very new kind of game mode with significantly fewer players. So a lot of the more advanced, difficult skips in tech are not allowed in this.
So I missed it. I saw that there was a hint for Fire Rod on my tracker. There it is. Okay. Megakidicarus has hinted for his Fire Rod. It is at Power Armor MK2.
Yeah, I'm wondering what's going on Eolina's side, because he's doing a tech that I've been watching take quite a long time for the number of science labs he has running. Might be picking one of those really long researches. Oh, changes his mind, just cancels it as I'm talking about it. Going straight for the rocket silo. So it looks like their team has made the call. Let's just get the Factorio player finished, get all of his items out. Matkap either just wants to get that stuff, or feels he has enough activities to do to fill his time while not receiving any help from the Factorio player during this whole rocket silo research. One thing to note with the Factorio side is that the rocket silo research is always local to the Factorio player's game. Similar with a couple techs early on, like your level 1 automation technology and level 1 logistics, just so that the Factorio player is guaranteed to have access to his most basic building blocks of factories and splitters and underground belts early on, and to make sure the rocket silo doesn't get lost somewhere weird, and to make sure that they can see those inputs to the rocket silo at any time to prepare for launching the rocket.
And knowing what we know now, that the fire rod is indeed in the Factorio world. Granted, Eolina and Matkap don't know that for certain. A strategy...
Sorry to interrupt. They might have a hint, because now I'm watching a similar situation on Udai's side where he's researching a tech that's going, once again, pretty slow for the amount of labs I'm looking at here. And he's ramping up real hard, so I think he's looking at some nasty researches in his near future here with how quickly he's ramping these labs up.
Yeah, very interesting. Sometimes, like, now it doesn't apply to this seed, but when you get into an ice rod hunt, you need just that one item, and it ends up on a nasty tech. That's really where, in my experience, that's the only time you really see a bottleneck or a BK mode in this game mode.
If you decide to play this particular setup at some point, you will see the Moon Pearl locked behind that Spidertron research in a Zelda inverted seed like we had in our showcase a few weekends ago. That's almost inevitable. I'm somewhat convinced there's a like 1 in 50 chance that the seed generation just puts it in there for fun.
That's new ways of trolling the players. I do see, yes, there is a fire rod hint on Matkap's side too. So yeah, I think the secret is out. They know where it is.
So when I wasn't looking, it seems like Eolina may have either finished his rocket silo or switched back off to something else. Looks like he's working on a non-advancement technology. We'll see what happened there. It's a little hard to see with, unfortunately, the 4-player setup. The Factorio side can get a little grainy when you need to see little details. I think I see some shotgun shells maybe up there getting ready to be buffered for the rocket. So far, it really looks like Udai has a big advantage, and we see him working on discharge defense remotes, which are both a blessing and a curse. They are incredibly cheap to make, so these must be the final part of the rocket silo ingredients that we're looking for. Incredibly cheap to make them on a single green chip per, but they only stack up to 1 per slot. So you end up having to fill up somewhere around like 25 chests or so full of these things just to have all of them buffered ahead of time, ready to go for when the rocket silo comes down. So he may still be missing a technology because I don't see him researching the rocket silo quite yet. Maybe missing a fluid handling based off of steel. Go ahead.
I want to note on that too, because I believe Megakidicarus is in go mode, but he's still making checks. He has the hook shot. He knows where the book is. He knows where the fire rod is. They're both in the factory game. I believe that's everything he needs to beat the game. So that would be the only reason that he should still be making these checks, is if he needs to find some help for his Factorio partner. Again, I'm not sure where the hook shot was. I'm assuming it was a Factorio research. I do know Megakidicarus checked Ice Rod Cave, and I think Matkap skipped that, but I didn't see what was there.
All right, so we have Udai. Looks like he's working on his small lamps there for his green science, getting the copper wire out. So he's starting to try to catch up there, kind of light on the iron plates there. I see feeding into quite a few green circuit factories. Might need to expand that a little bit. Haven't seen anything happen with that steel he set up, so that's still set up and by now most likely buffered up to 1,000+ steel plates, whatever he may need for his rocket silo. So he's in really good shape whenever he can get all of his techs and get that rocket silo researched. We see, I think, discharge defense remotes coming down on Eolina's side. Yep, there's his shotgun shells coming out. So he's also getting very close to getting that rocket built, and he's back to researching it. Looks like it's roughly about 50% done. So we'll see what he does with that once he has that in his inventory.
So I wonder if Megakidicarus is chasing the Bombos right now. He may not be aware of the various ways that you can do things in inverted. I am certainly no stranger to that. Recently, on a showcase event, I didn't understand that Ganon's Tower, which is Aga Tower, in inverted, will take you to the light world. So some of these can be tricky. There's also, you know, the heat of the moment. You're in a race. Sometimes you forget a thing or two. Or maybe he's just looking for a tech that his Factorio buddy needs.
So we see on Eudaimonistic's side, he has started his rocket silo research. So maybe both of the Factorio players know something we don't, and they're getting ready to get this seed finished. We see huge number of shotgun shells coming down for Eolina. Should get him caught up in that buffer of those shotgun shells pretty quickly here. And he definitely has the advantage on the rocket silo research. So if he has everything he needs, we may see him get that launched out first. So we'll keep an eye on each of these rocket silo researches, how they progress.
Yeah, I can't tell if Udai is shut off his research or tapered it, or if he's just...
He's switched over to the rocket silo, and his green science is not particularly robust at the moment. So I think only the first 8 or so of his factories are actually running right now. So you can build 200 research labs if you want to, but they won't do anything if you can't consistently feed them. So that's always part of the balancing act of this particular playstyle and game mode of the Factorio Randomizer. Is you're always constantly making decisions, trying to decide what is the most important thing I need to do next. Do I need to ramp up smelting of any particular resource? Do I need to expand a particular color of science? Do I need to build more labs? Do I need more power? You're constantly looking at your factory and evaluating what to do with your time, because there's a lot of different ways to approach this. Everybody builds their factory differently, and there's never one specific way to do it. You can always find your own particular style that helps you kind of visualize your factory as you're building it and get it down on the ground that much faster.
So we had a very unfortunate thing happen here to Megakidicarus. He's on his way to the randomizer room, and he accidentally stepped on the warp, which skipped the randomizer room. But good on him, he's soldiering on. He's going to walk through again and just get right back to it. Matt cleaning up Misery Mire here, gets him his 3rd crystal. So he does have about a 1 dungeon lead on Megakidicarus right now. Assuming that the hookshot is coming from a Factorio goal complete here. I don't know if Matt and Eolina know that yet. But he's going to get started on Ice Palace. It's a dungeon he can complete right now. He does have his Fire Rod.
Okay, and we see Eolina finishing up his rocket silo research and throwing it on the ground. So we'll see if he can get this building, and looks like he may be close to victory here. I think it may be a pretty big limitation. It looks like he did set up a tiny bit of steel smelting down there at the bottom. So that may still be the saving grace for Udai. If that steel is a really nasty crafting time, as mentioned earlier, every crafting time in the game has a bit of randomization, anywhere from 50% faster to 200% slower from the base crafting time, which means that those steel plates can be anywhere from 8 seconds crafting all the way up to almost 30 seconds. So it can be a pretty wild swing in terms of how quickly you can crank out 1,000 steel plates.
And welcome in anyone who is new. This is 2v2 Archipelago, A Link to the Past and Factorio. Archipelago is a system that will allow you to play multiple games together with your friends in a multi-world fashion. Here we are just seeing 2 of the games, but there are other games including Minecraft, Subnautica, Risk of Rain. It's quite a broad list of different games to suit your playstyle. It's a lot of fun. I recommend checking it out, even if only one of these 2 games is your thing, or maybe both, or maybe you got something else that you love. It may be coming to Archipelago. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, just to expand on how cool this whole Archipelago project is, you can play with pretty much any number of players, all playing their own games with settings kind of tuned to their own preference. On the Factorio side, since we're watching here, it's compatible with most quality of life mods, things like squeak through, a lot of your common just help you build your factory kind of things. It doesn't quite yet support the more crazy things like your Bob's Angels setups, things that actually change the tech tree, although that's been talked about quite a bit from what I've read. But you can play your own particular factory as easy or as difficult as you want, changing how quick the technologies research, how many different types of science packs you need to research, all sorts of options to make it easier or harder. And you can be doing this while your buddy that's playing Slay the Spire is just playing Slay the Spire with a little bit of a different twist, where sometimes you'll research a relic or a card draw form. So it's really cool how some of these games interact and work together, and it's definitely worth checking out. Archipelago.gg is the site. There's a link to a Discord there where there's a great community, a lot of people willing to help out with setup and suggestions. And if you're by chance a developer of any of these randomizer games, you can start talking to some of the Archipelago developers to see how you can get your project involved.
Yeah, it's quite amazing, and thanks to everyone who has made this a reality. I do want to mention, though, we've got Matkap going into Cold Stare now. Megakidicarus was a little bit short on magic, but luckily had a blue potion, so he's made his way into Mire. And I've seen massive expansion on production here on both Factorio players' sides.
Yep, it looks like Udai has solved his green science bottleneck, so all of his labs are cranking out at full power. His rocket silo research should be done here momentarily. And we see Eolina still working on his rocket, so we've got a bit of a race going on here. I'm not quite sure who may get this done. We'll see if Eudai's buffering way ahead of time can get him to catch up, or if Eolina managed to get the research done in time to pull out the win on the Factorio side here. So our overall winner here will be the combined times of both players on a team, both the Factorio and Zelda player here. So even if Eolina manages to launch the rocket here first, that's not necessarily a guaranteed win for his team. We'll have to wait and see how the Zelda seeds shape up.
Yeah, Matt is going to check the ice rod cave here that he had skipped earlier. Kind of a nice way to clean off the route after finishing Ice Palace. He's still in need of a hook shot here. I'm getting confirmation that it's not in Ice Rod Cave. He may be doing a fake flipper here. I can't remember if he has cleaned up the Zora area or not.
So we see Eolina's rocket there somewhere around 60% complete, while Eudai is still setting up the feed to his. One hot tip for any of the Factorio players out there doing this, it's very easy to load up your rocket silo just by keeping things in your inventory and then control clicking on a empty space in your inventory, which will automatically fill up the slots in your rocket silo with anything you have in your inventory without having to individually find things and drag them over. So it can be a quick way to fill up your rocket silo without having to set up any conveyor belts and inserter arms. Although with the unfortunate discharge defense remotes, those will mess up your inventory being a single item per slot. So that's not a great option there, unfortunately. So we see Eudai monitoring his rocket silo. Eolina also looks like he's getting quite close. Eudai is utilizing the productivity modules, which will mean he needs overall less resources. With 4 of them in there, that gives him, I believe, 16% productivity. So for every 1 complete rocket part he builds, he'll get 16% of an additional one for free. So every maybe 6 or so rocket parts he gets, he'll get a free 7th one, saving him the time of having to build it and the resources used to build it. So we'll see if that can save him a few moments here. Looks like his rocket is going at a super fast pace here. Eolina's might have slowed down a bit. He's closing the gap here. I think we may have kind of dual Factorio finishes here, almost maybe within a minute of each other at the rate this is going. This is super close.
Yeah, I think eudaimonistic may have made the decision to stop research, as I see a research there blinking pending, showing that he is not currently researching something new.
Yep, just some celebratory research fireworks, noting that his rocket silo is done. So they've definitely made the call. Looks like there's nothing selected at all for Eolina. So both sides making the call to cut off all research and let the Zelda players fend for themselves while the Factorio players get their rockets finished. And here Eudai is extremely close while Eolina's building some extra steel. So that decision early on to throw down those electric furnaces and get that steel done, I think they're both over 90% right now. This is incredibly close. This is great.
And we will see when they do finish, the Zelda players will be in a stun lock of receiving prize after prize.
We probably could have saved our Archipelago.gg sales pitch for the approaching 2 to 3 minutes of watching our Zelda players being stunned. All right, we see the rocket already up for Eudai and coming up for Eolina. I think we're probably looking at maybe a 15-second difference between these two players. It's incredible. Well done on both sides. One thing with the rocket silo, you get to pick anything you want to kind of throw there into the...
Oh, wow, a beautiful simultaneous rocket release.
Yeah, this is great. So
Good job to
Udai
both
decided
Factorio
to
runners.
put his car in there, which you can then climb into to ride along in the rocket, which is a fun little Easter egg. And wow, incredibly close finishes here between the two Factorio players. So this is really going to come down to how each of the Zelda players do here.
Yeah, I can see on the tracker here they have all 4 swords. Hookshot was in there. They've got Fire Rod, Ice Rod, Red Cane. They've got everything they need to beat the game, minus silver arrows, should you need it. I expect both of these runners will not need their silver arrows, but should they want it, it is in their game somewhere.
So we have an official race time, GG time of 1:23 even for eudaimonistic and a time of 1:23.13 for Eolina. So our 2 Factorio players finishing within 15 seconds of each other. Incredibly close race here.
Yeah, just a quick recap on how this works. Through Archipelago, we have both games communicating to a server, and then that game the Archipelago will indicate to you what checks have been made. So individually between Link to the Past and Factorio, the researches in Factorio have been randomized. Link to the Past has been randomized, as you may have seen previously, and the 2 games are working together in a multi-world where the items are shared between both games, and you have to work together to launch a rocket and defeat Ganon.
The favorite example I like to use when I'm trying to describe this to someone is that Link may open up the chest in Link's house at the beginning of the game and suddenly find a clip of uranium bullets for the Factorio player, and then the Factorio player may perform a research and suddenly produce the Master Sword for his Zelda teammate. So you get these interesting crossover happenings as part of the Archipelago system when you can have, I believe, 8 different games are currently integrated through Archipelago. We've mentioned some of them previously, but the big ones, you have your Factorio and A Link to the Past here. There's a Minecraft 2v2 tournament going on here as part of Speedrun Live's 2021. There is Ocarina of Time has been integrated with Archipelago. There's a couple quick roguelikes in Risk of Rain 2 and Slay the Spire. There's a great little lesser-known Metroidvania called Time Spinner that I had never heard of until it became integrated with Archipelago, and so I picked that up, learned the randomizer, and it's just fun to see new games become a part of this and have an opportunity to learn them while still playing in a multi-world with your friends who are still playing the games that they like. So it's a great opportunity to kind of branch out your randomizer options.
That's true. Subnautica is a part of this. It's actually one of my favorite ones to play right now at the moment. So there's something for everyone, and more coming. One thing I would do like to mention here, so like the rockets get launched, and then like Link just goes into like overpowered, super mode. You get all your hearts, your mails, your swords. Like just the difference. Like although Matkap did a great job defeating Vitreous earlier, when Megakidicarus got there, it's just like cape, butter sword. I'm just gonna dash all over you, kill the boss in just a matter of seconds. It's kind of crazy because they can just go now and rush through these dungeons. They know they're in go mode. Matkap does have, I believe, a 2-dungeon lead right now, so he has a bit of an edge. But like considering how quickly and how close the Factorio players finish, this is going to come down to who defeats Ganon first. So Matkap currently in search of what I believe is the big key for the dungeon. Um, in a twist of fate here in inverted mode, this is probably the worst place for the big key to be, because essentially you're going to be forced to go all the way through the dungeon backwards. And Megakidicarus is going to clean up Desert Palace. Good idea. He's here in the area, just finished Mire. If he finishes this up right now, he won't have to come back, and it's another crystal that he is going to need. All right, there's the big key for Matt. He mirrors right back to Laser Bridge, and he'll make his way on to Trianx right now. Megakidicarus using the Fire Rod tactics on Landmola. We got one of them. Sometimes it can be a little tricky to nail these guys. I actually kind of like the method of just slashing the swords. It's not the fastest, but it does quite well. And just like that, he's got another crystal.
And even though the Factorial players have finished, we see Udai playing around with all the treats he got from his own forfeit, filling in a full set of power armor there, running around, killing some time, waiting for his Zelda partner to finish to see how this race turns out. So both Factorial players have finished. Nothing they do now will affect the rest of this game. Everything that was in their game has been sent over to their Zelda partner. So they just get to hang out while their team finishes.
Interesting. Megakidicarus is checking a shop. He knows that you can get a blue potion right here. That's actually something I didn't know. He's got a lot of cash on reserve here from his Factorio rocket launch. Matkap, what dungeons does he have left? He has Desert, I know that. I believe they both... Let's see. We know that Palace of Darkness and Swamp are pendants, as well as Hera. This might be it, if I'm counting right. I think this is the last dungeon for Matt. Cap. So it's just essentially a hunt for the big key. Don't have to make any more checks. Unless you're desperate for silver arrows. It will save you some time, but generally not more time than any incidental check that happens to be on your way. Megakidicarus taking care of those pen gators. They can be annoying, especially if you're going to make a return trip into that room. Remembering that you do have to flip that switch if you want a nice, clean ice palace. That said, the icebreaker trick here, I don't find it to be the easiest. It's not difficult, but the number of times I get it in the first try is not many. There we go. He gets the trick. He knows he doesn't need to check chests, and he's just moving on. Matkap now on his way to the Landmola fight. Without silver arrows, Fire Rod, Ice Rod strategy is probably still the fastest.
So Udai running around having some fun with some nuclear missiles, taking care of some deforestation. For Chad, I believe the story goes that the Factorio randomizer mod that we see here was originally an April Fool's joke that kind of took on a life of its own when it turned out that it's actually a whole lot of fun. So I absolutely encourage anybody who has any familiarity with Factorio, or even people who don't, to check the game out, check the randomizer out. It's kind of a whole new way to play the game that I personally find really interesting, and just makes you think about how you build your factories quite a bit differently when you don't know what you need to research or what you're going to have available to build with.
Alright, Matt has made his trek into the light world on his way to meet Ganon at the top of the castle. You just do have to go in and then out again to get to him. And I think Megakidicarus still needs a Trinex, if I believe that's correct. All things considered, these two runners are not that far apart. Cape and Butter Sword makes quick work of Phase 1 Ganon here. Phase 2, get all the magic in the world, just swing and slash at him for 100 slashes. Why not? Pretty quick Phase 3 here. Has the lamp ready. Baits out the fire bat so it doesn't hit him. It's good. One thing, you know, when you're doing silverless, getting that torch glitch is paramount. You can still do it without the torch glitch, but your window for hitting these spin slashes in gets dramatically reduced. Butter Sword maybe not the worst, but certainly, you know, something you want to make sure you take the time to get that torch glitch. Alright, Megakidicarus on his way to Mothula. Butter Sword, Red Mail, just go in there and slash him, push him around a bit, and just like that, well, in a matter of seconds, Matkap has defeated Ganon. He'll be walking into the Triforce room with a victory and an official racetime.gg time of 1:35:52.
And with that, we can say Team Bolas Azules has claimed the victory here in this Link to the Past Factorio 2v2 Archipelago Randomizer race. Congratulations to them.
We'll give them a minute here and see if they are interested in an interview. Meanwhile, we do have Megakidicarus on his way up Death Mountain to Turtle Rock. I believe his is last crystal, and then he'll be on his way to fight and defeat Ganon as well.
while we're waiting for this interview to get set up, again, you can find out more about Archipelago and its game mode and other games on archipelago.gg. We have a Discord community where people can help you get things set up. Right now, there's 8 games currently supported, with a couple more on the very near horizon. You can check it all out there.
And we are working on getting an interview set up here with the winning team, Bolas Azules. Meanwhile, Megakidicarus is going to go on his journey backwards through Turtle Rock to find this big key so that he can get into the room with Trinix. So when it comes down to this, I'm trying to think what the real difference here in the race is. Arguably, you could say the Factorio players were pretty close to an even match here. So what was the differences on A Link to the Past? We did have an early boots hint that may have sped Matkap up. He was aggressive in his early dungeons. He cleared Thieves Town right away rather than having to make a return trip to it. And one thing that I am going to commend him on is I think he had very good resource management in the early game. He had enough bombs, he had enough rupees. Just, overall, played well.
Yep, and then on the Factorio side, honestly couldn't have much more of a close match than that. Looked like Eolina had a pretty substantial head start on the rocket, and then eudaimonistic, with that stockpile of steel plates he had, caught right up and managed to eke out the win by just a handful of seconds.
All right, we're still in progress here. I think we'll get the interview set up here in a second. There's Megakidicarus taking the leap down to Laser Bridge. So we can go and get to Trinix. All right, and we are joined by the winners, Bolas Azules, Eolina, and Matkap. Welcome.
Hello. Hello, thank you.
Congratulations on your victory today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It feels good for sure. Yesterday was a bit worse for us, so yeah, it feels good to have things turn out nicely.
Yeah, I want to start by saying I was impressed by your early game resource management, Matkap. You did a good job farming bombs early, rupees. You had just enough for where you needed to be, and I think that is sometimes things like that go unnoticed. So I want to at least acknowledge that you did well with that.
Yeah, I mean, like, Skullwood's starting inverted, I think it's like a must, basically, because that way you can just get the rupees, go south and do everything. Like, clearing Skullwoods, it's a bit slow. Fortunately, I did like the big key chest first try as well, which can be tricky with nothing, because sometimes the game doesn't let you. So yeah, maybe like I wasn't getting the best route, but I was like doing everything that I could, and Aga was open quite early as well. So yeah, the gloves in pod felt really nice as well for sure. And yeah, to be honest, in general, like the 7 crystal just felt good. Like, okay, let's just play the full game.
Yeah, glad to hear it too, and you did well. Before we get into Factorio here too, I did want to also mention, we noticed you had an early hint for boots, which I believe you did yesterday as well. How do you think that paid off for you? Or is it just, a nice quality of life, or... What are your
Much
thoughts
better than
there?
yesterday. I think it was much better thought out and everything because like yesterday was different because it wasn't inverted and it was like all the opposite. It was like a really fast seed, much faster than even I was realizing. But I delayed the hint today. Obviously, if it's inverted, you're gonna have much less checks, so it's gonna be much slower hint. But once you are in the light world in inverted and you know it's a 7 crystal, like you have a ton of stuff to do all the same. So just do it faster, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, well done on your gameplay. It was a pleasure to watch. And Eumena, do you have some questions for Eolina?
Yeah. Well, first, congratulations on a really good time on looked like a pretty gross factory. What was going through your head during some of those bug attacks on your steam power generation there?
I was afraid because on some practice games, the first wave was like 2 bugs, and suddenly like 30 bugs appeared and destroyed my base. So I was really afraid because I was delaying a lot visiting the bug base. But I felt good with the missile launcher with area with AOE. So at the time that Matkap sent me the technology, I went and destroyed everything because I cannot let a game like this be lost because I don't clear the bases.
Yeah. I think your opponent was a little more proactive about clearing them out, but he had his own issues with them. It's always a problem in these seeds where you're stuck in the middle of the desert. In terms of the close finish you guys had, do you remember off the top of your head what the smelting time was for the steel plates that were required for the rocket?
I think I didn't check. I didn't know that the steel plates were required for the rocket. Like at the end, when Matkap and I were talking about if I was on go mode or not, I checked and it was like I have everything. Matkap, I can end this just doing the rocket. He asked me for the fire rod, so I delayed a bit my rocket for the fire rod, so he could start finishing his dungeons. And after that, I started with the steel. I saw one of your plays where you place like 20 furnace for steel. That was cool to watch, but I realized about the steel plates very late, so I just double the iron production and place the electrical furnaces at the end of my produce line.
Yeah, I think that was the kind of difference there at the end. I think you are close to about 60% done with your rocket when your Factorio opponent started his, but he had a whole bunch of steel already set up ahead of time. And I think that might have made the little bit of difference there. But otherwise, very impressive performance. I always like seeing how other Factorio players approach these games. It's a pretty small community at this point, so there's always new things to learn from other players. So congratulations on your win today, and I look forward to watching you in the future.
Yeah, to interject here, we have the runner-up team joining us. Megakidicarus just finished with a race time GG time of 1 hour, 46 minutes, and 49 seconds. Welcome, guys.
GG. That was an interesting race.
It was down to the wire for Factorio. Both of you guys had your rocket launching on the screen at the same time. It was quite exhilarating.
Yeah, I had to, when I saw 13 seconds later it not done, I'm like, oh wow.
Yeah, I was thinking like, oh, I'm finishing first, but no, my rocket was starting to engine and then has finished. Okay.
Yeah, that was crazy for sure.
Yeah, I just finish talking about this with Eolina, but at the end of the race there for the factories, Eolina was about, I'd say, 60% done with his rocket by the time you placed yours down. But it turned out to be the steel plates that you had built up much earlier let you just tear through that rocket. And you were both right at about 90% at the same time, and you managed to pull out that few seconds ahead. So very well done there.
It ended up being discharge remotes that I didn't have enough of fast enough. I really thought it was going to be shotgun shells, to be honest.
Yeah, it was a really interesting combination of rocket components between the discharge defense, which you have to... The problem there being the inventory management, not really being able to buffer them because of their 1 per slot limit. And then the really long craft time for shotgun shells is just a different beast to manage. So well done to both Factorio players managing that.
Yeah, and to give a couple of background context for crafting time, 5.68 seconds for shotgun shells, 8 seconds for steel, which isn't bad.
Yeah, that's pretty fast steel. I was curious what that was. That was kind of the limiting component for Eolina.
The worst one was iron. Iron was 3.42.
Oof.
So I do want to ask a question here regarding hints. So one of them in particular was the fire rod, which was certainly a needed item by both teams here. But in terms for Megakidicarus and eudaimonistic here, it looked like at some point you made the decision to stop research in favor of rocket launch. Is that true? What went into that thought?
Yeah, that was pretty much what happened.
Part of that was running some calculations in my head and just, okay, rocket has about 3 minutes for launch time and is a quick research. I had, at that point, I think I had dungeons that I could do, both fairly long dungeons, as well as setting up to finish Ice Palace at the same time. So I was like, you know what? I'm close enough to finish these dungeons.
Yeah, that's certainly a good strategy. It's definitely one we employ on our team. Is if I can do stuff and you can launch the rocket while I'm still doing stuff, then go for it. I'll get the item eventually.
Bad Moons definitely gets the short end of the straw in our games. I think Eolina mentioned stopping his rocket research to get that fire rod, and that's not anything I'd ever do for Bad Moons.
Well, and the other component of it too is that the hint revealed that it was on Power Armor Mark II, which is not necessarily a late tech, but it is usually an expensive one. So it didn't seem likely that it would be worth waiting.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing both factories kind of switch to some long non-advancement research towards the end, and then both of you kind of switch off of it for a bit, or just abandon it altogether, get the rocket. Do you remember kind of what you were looking at there at the end?
Yeah, so the one thing that both of us, I can guarantee you, Eolina, had the same issue, was finding optics. That was the one recipe for green science that we were desperately needing. We, in fact, barely needed anything for green. I think that was the only green science we even got. I didn't see Eolina, but I'm guessing probably the same situation.
Or what glove did Bad Moons end up getting? Was it the one in Palace of Darkness, or was it the one in Factorio?
For Light World access, if you mean Matkap, he received his first glove in Palace of Darkness.
Yep. I cleared Woolwoods, Thiefstown, then got the flute and just went to pod. So honestly, I sometimes get a bit confused with the flute in the Dark World. I don't know. The tracker doesn't display it properly, so sometimes I get it a bit confused. So between that and because it was a pendant, I just said, okay, let's just go to pod. I have lamp and mirror, so it can't be that bad. And
early flute, I immediately fluted over to Meyer. The 2 checks there, both of them were exciting checks if I remember. One of them was Ice Shot, I can't remember one, but I think it was something good for Factorio.
I think it might have been logistics.
I think so. Yeah, I did it after Thiefstown, which, I don't know, I was probably a mistake thinking about it after, but I don't know. If you are there, no? And I don't know. The mountain kind of also confused me because Turtle Rock can be 1,000,000 trips and Hera and everything, but Like if you're there, you're there. And I at least did get to delay the mountain a lot. And once I was there, I did almost everything.
Yeah, I
Had a
did
lot
note
of-
you were quite efficient with your Death Mountain trip. You got both Light World and Dark World down at the same time. So props to that.
Yeah. Sometimes with
No.
inverted seeds, it's a lot of plays.
And then one more question here for you, Megakidicarus. You did run out of arrows during your Armos fight. You had a pretty ingenious solution. Was there a moment of panic, or did you just know you had it? You're like, yeah, I've got this. I know what to do.
There was a little bit of moment of panic. I tend to be a little bit impulsive with the way that I talk, so I'm like, oh, concerned. I ran out of arrows. And I had just gotten the Samaria moments after, so I'm like, let's do something cool that many people think to do. Go off a little bit.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah, well done on both sides. It was a great match to watch, and it was fun getting to commentate for you.
Much appreciation and thank you for doing the restream. Also to SpeedGaming for SpeedGaming 5 availability. This is a really fun format to play and really awesome to showcase it. I'm really glad to have that opportunity.
I guess I'll open it up. If there's any final thoughts, start with you, Eolina. Anything you want to add or conclude with?
Well, I enjoyed this game. I'm very happy of playing this tournament with you guys. I'm surprised of playing on SpeedGaming, and it's been a cool experience. So thank you very much for the organization and the streamers and the speakers and everything. Thank you very much.
Awesome. And Matkap, any final thoughts?
Yeah, GG's to everyone. Thank you to both the Archipelago community and SpeedGaming. It's really awesome way to play. You get to learn new games as they're at it, which is awesome as well. And yeah, check it out. Really fun to play with friends, and even better to be able to play it competitively like this. And you never know what combination of games maybe we can have next year. So yeah, check it out. It's really cool. And thank you to everyone involved.
Yeah, I'm certainly looking forward to what they add. Eudaimonistic, would you have anything you'd like to add as a final thought?
Can't wait for the SGL 22 tournament with Super Soda Drinker Pro as one of the mixed-in games. Keep an eye out for the April Fool's game next year. I don't know what it is, but I think that might be it.
All right, and Megakidicarus, you got anything you'd like to conclude with?
Archipelago is always expanding, always adding new games, and to see what Archipelago is all about, we're open to all kinds of different players, all kinds of people to add any games to them.
Awesome. All right, and with that, I'm Bad Moons. My co-host was Eumenon. I'll let Eumenon have the final words here.
It's always a pleasure to be a part of SpeedGaming. Remember, you can check this out at archipelago.gg. Check out the setup instructions there, the Discord. Become part of the community. It's a great group of people, constantly growing. And keep an eye out for future races the rest of the week.
GG, everyone. Later.
Gee.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.